P.S. There's a guy right outside who's leaf blowing a lot, so if you hear a really loud leaf blowing noise, that's what it's from. Real quick, if you're unfamiliar with me or this channel, this place, or YouTube, let me explain. This channel is all about me recounting my experience with anorexia, trying to help as much as I can people through their own struggles with eating disorders or mental health in general. So if any of that sounds really cool to you, consider subscribing to the channel, or I'm just glad that you're here watching this video. We're talking today about a question that I feel like really helped me through the recovery process when I started asking myself this question, which I feel is a little bit of an underrated question. It really started to help me turn things around in the right direction. You know, the more that I talk to people about their own experience in eating disorders and just in mental health in general, it's really interesting for me to see how people, or what people come up with on their own that really helps them. This is one of those things that really helped me that I haven't really seen a whole lot of other people talk about. I have seen some people really create their own really cool methods for recovering. Once you start finding this spot of really just talking yourself through your own experiences, you kind of come up with your own remedies, so to speak. So this is one of my own remedies that I feel like really helped me just like walk in the opposite direction, meaning in a good way, like towards recovery. So through my whole experience in an eating disorder, before I was in recovery and during recovery, I always would push up against basically every single method of recovery that my family or my supporters would try to like hand to me, you know? So like eating more food would push up against that, meaning like I would go against it. Eating unhealthy foods that I didn't consider good for you, eating more than the minimum, gaining any sort of weight, pizza, eating a full portion of something, like, or eating a whole sandwich rather than just eating half. Those were some really specific examples, but those are examples of things that I would do to really push up. My eating disorder stuff would push up against recovery all the time. I was constantly pressing against what was good for me, fighting against what was good for me. All of these stress points, all these points of recovery were things that I really needed to push through to get to where I wanted or needed to go, which was recovery, which was outside of my eating disorder. And this question, among a lot of other things, but really like equipping myself with this question was one of the biggest game changers to start the process of turning my mental thought process around. And you all know I've talked about this so much. I really believe that the recovery process for eating disorders and for just mental health in general, it's all up in the mind. It's a lot of mental stuff that we have to work through to turn things around to find progress. And I don't want to make it seem like this question was the only thing that was pushing me to recovery. If you watch my other stuff, you know that there were a lot of things going on. But this is one big tool, one big weapon that I was able to use against my eating disorder. What was the question? That question, drum roll, please. Have a drum. Used to have a drum. Okay, we don't got a drum. I'll just edit in the drum. Question that I would ask myself to push through those stress points. What would actually happen? Question mark, question mark. You hear that leaf blower? Background effect noise. So let me break down the process of how I asked myself this question. What would actually happen? Question mark, to push forward recovery. Okay, so the mentality before I started asking myself this question in the eating disorder was, let's take gaining weight as an example, the topic of gaining weight. If you were to tell me, if I were to tell myself, or if someone were to tell me back then in the eating disorder, Cam, you need to gain weight, what would go through my mind was something like, I can't gain weight. I literally can't. If I start gaining weight, I'll gain too much. It'll go in the opposite direction. I'll lose control and I will get fat. I don't want any of those things to happen, so I won't gain weight. And eventually, it got to a point where I realized that I had been telling myself this lie, really, for so long. I had been in this eating disorder for a decent amount of time before I started asking myself this question. And so I realized that I had spun this story of what would actually happen if I started gaining weight. But then all of a sudden, just like one day, I really took a step back and internally asked myself, you know, what would actually happen if I would gain weight? Gaining weight was like the biggest topic to overcome with this question. So I started using that question to fight against other things in my eating disorder life, such as with eating something like pizza. I would talk to myself about eating pizza, and normally if pizza would come my way, if I would have pizza in front of me, or if I would be at a friend's house and like pizza would be there, I would spin the story. I would use the excuse that I didn't like pizza. I would use the excuse that made me feel bad. In all reality, I simply didn't want to eat pizza because I knew that it was a fatty food, that it was unhealthy, and I was afraid of what it would do to me if I would eat it. So eventually I got so really honestly kind of just tired of me telling myself this story, this false story of why I wasn't going to have pizza. So I asked myself the question with the pizza in mind, hey, King, what would actually happen if you would eat pizza? Like, it was, the best way I can describe it is almost like it was an experiment. It became an experiment where I was actually testing out, like I actually wanted to test out and see, like in my mind, these awful things would happen if I would eat pizza. So I kind of made a deal with myself. I asked myself that question, what would actually happen if I would eat the pizza? And there were like, you know, two paths. Okay, either what I think is going to come true is going to come true, and I'm like gonna lose control of the pizza and gain way too much weight from like a single slice of pizza, which is not going to happen. But that was my eating disorder brain. So either I thought like, okay, either that's going to happen or not that is going to happen. It's gonna be okay. Maybe it's not what I think is actually going to happen. I put it to the test. What would actually happen if I would eat pizza? So I experimented. I actually ate pizza, and I promised myself, I was like, okay, if those things happen, if those bad things happen, then I'm right, I'll drop the pizza. But guess what happened when I ate pizza? Not the bad stuff, the good stuff. It tasted amazing, I felt good, and the world did not end. So I started using this question. So after I realized that that was the case with pizza, it wasn't like I just started gorging myself with pizza, but I really started being okay with eating pizza as it came. And then I used that question to move on to other things, such as like, okay, what would actually happen if I would eat this full Subway sub? Let's put it to the test. I put on my experiment scientist hat, eat the full sub, and realized that the world was not gonna end. It's really not even the question that's like the most important thing here. It's the idea or the sense of wondering what will happen. It's the sense of wonder, testing things out, like working against your eating disorder logic with experiments. I used this later during college specifically, like when I was over-exercising and working out too much. I felt really lethargic, really tired, like I just was not in a good way at all. And so I used this question during that time as well. Sometimes it was tough for me to remind myself that like this question existed, but it sometimes took me getting into a really rough spot to bring this question back. I wish I would have kept the question just like kind of in front of me at all times. But like when I was over-exercising and over-working out, I asked myself the question, what would actually happen if I would work out 5 days a week instead of 7 days a week? So I was working out without putting any rest days in. I figured that I would just test this out for a short period of time, and if I didn't like it, then I could always go back. But I wanted to figure it out for myself to see if it actually helped me, because I heard other people talking about rest days and like only working out 5 or 4 or 3 days a week, and in my mind I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I want to work out every single day. I wanted to test it out. So I tested it out for a couple weeks. For a couple weeks, I just worked out 5 days a week rather than 7. And doing that honestly broke my perception. It broke my over-exercising because it changed my perspective on what I thought I knew about working out and exercising. Basically limiting myself to working out 5 days a week, leaving the rest for just complete rest days, chilling or just like not going to the gym. It actually helped me get better, improve my weights in the gym, and I felt better overall, felt more energetic, and guess what? The world didn't end. I didn't gain a ton of weight. I was so scared to stop working out every single day because I thought something bad would happen. In reality, it actually made my life better. You know, this is like everything. Like everything will not change instantly. It won't change like overnight in an instant. But this is one of those tools that you can keep with you to slowly, like over time, start to question the things that you do, approaching it from like an experimental view, of an experimental perspective, saying like, well, what would actually happen if I would work out less? What would actually happen if I would look at social media an hour less every single day? What would happen if I would take that extra bite? What would happen if I would eat that extra meal, eat that extra snack? The options here are limitless, but the point is to get you to experiment against your eating disorder brain. You know, sometimes if you eat that extra meal, especially during recovery, like you might feel a little bloated. You also might feel better mentally. You might feel more energetic. There are a lot of different things that you can pay attention to when you ask this question and when you execute on the action of experimenting with these things. So ask yourself, what would actually happen? What would actually happen if I did X? If I did this? I'd even encourage you to write out a list, write out a list of things that you're afraid of or things that you're actually just curious about that you feel like, had this like inkling, like maybe this would be good to try out, or maybe I just want to see this small thing, this small change will help me. It really helped me, and I hope it'll help you. Hey, everybody, that's it for this episode. I'm working on some more content, bringing some new stuff out, have some good stuff planned for the YouTube channel. As always, I'm so grateful for you just being here. Thanks for watching through this whole video. If you got to the end, I really appreciate that. If you need anything from me at all, have any questions for me, let me know in the comments section or DM me on Instagram. Try to get back to everyone as much as I can. So, hey, just let me know. If you'd like to see any topics, me cover any topics on YouTube or on Instagram too, let me know. Hey, that's it. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next week. I have a limited space. I can't do a whole lot for the end surprise anymore.